The sun was just beginning to climb over the jagged peaks of the Arizona desert. Its warm light touched the sand and rocks, casting long, soft shadows across the narrow paths that wound through the canyon. In a small Apache village hidden at the edge of the desert, life moved at its own quiet pace. The village was peaceful but remote, surrounded by dry hills and sparse greenery. Children played near the riverbank. Elders spoke in low, respectful tones, and the women prepared meals over fires while keeping an eye on the little ones. In this village lived Ayoka, the daughter of the Apache chief. Ayoka was a girl unlike any other in the village. She had been born blind, and though her mind was sharp and her heart kind, the other villagers often struggled to connect with her. Some avoided her, unsure of how to speak to someone who could not see. Others felt pity, which made her uncomfortable. A few were indifferent, treating her as though she were invisible. Ayoka had learned to live in this quiet world, listening to the sounds around her: the flowing river, the wind through the trees, the soft steps of animals moving across the sand. These sounds were her eyes, and over time she had become skilled at understanding them. On this particular morning, a man appeared on the dusty path that led toward the village. His name was Luke, a young cowboy with broad shoulders and strong hands. He had grown up on a ranch far away and had learned early to face life alone. Horses, cattle, and long hours under the sun had made him patient and steady. He was passing through the desert, delivering supplies to a nearby town, when he noticed the village tucked between the hills. Something about it made him slow his horse. He had seen many places in his travels, but this village felt different, calm, hidden and alive in a way he had never known. As Luke rode closer to the riverbank, he saw a figure sitting quietly near the water. It was a young girl, her small hands tracing the edges of a woven basket filled with herbs. At first, he thought she might be a traveler like himself, lost in the desert. He slowed his horse, dismounted, and approached with careful steps. Ayoka heard the soft crunch of footsteps and lifted her head. "Hello?" she called gently, uncertain who it could be. Luke stopped a few feet away, studying her. Her dark hair fell in soft waves around her face, and though her eyes could not see, there was a quiet confidence in the way she held herself. Luke noticed the way she listened, tilting her head slightly to catch every sound. "Hello there," he replied. "Are you lost?" Ayoka shook her head. "No, I am fine. I live here," she said, her voice calm and steady. "Who are you?" "I'm Luke," he said. "I'm just passing through." He took a careful step closer, glancing at the basket. "What are you doing?" "Gathering herbs," Ayoka replied. "They are for the medicine woman." "I help her sometimes." Luke nodded, impressed. "That's useful," he said. "I never learned much about herbs myself." As he stepped a little closer, Luke's boot caught on a small rock hidden in the sand. He stumbled forward and knocked into the basket. Herbs spilled across the ground. He froze, horrified. "Oh!" Ayoka exclaimed, startled. "My herbs." "I'm so sorry," Luke said quickly. He bent down, gathering the leaves and stems, trying not to crush them. "I didn't see that rock." "Are you hurt?" Ayoka laughed lightly, a soft and musical sound that surprised Luke. "No, I'm fine. Thank you for helping." "It's okay." That simple moment broke the ice between them. Luke helped her gather the herbs carefully, and she explained the uses of each one as he worked. He listened with genuine interest, asking questions and making small jokes. Ayoka found his presence comforting. Unlike others, he did not look at her with pity. He spoke to her as an equal, and that made her feel alive in a way she had not felt with most villagers. Over the next few days, Luke continued to visit Ayoka. Every morning he would ride to the village, bringing small gifts: a piece of bread, a water bottle, sometimes a small trinket he found along his travels. Ayoka showed him how to navigate the village safely. She taught him to listen to the subtle changes in the wind, the sounds of animals, and the flow of the river. In return, Luke taught her simple things he had learned on the ranch. He showed her how to recognize different types of animal tracks by touch, how to feel the strength of a branch before leaning on it, and how to sense when a horse was nervous even if it could not be seen clearly. The villagers watched with mixed feelings. Some were curious about the friendship forming between the blind girl and the cowboy. Others were suspicious. "Why does he spend so much time with her?" they whispered among themselves. "He should not meddle with the chief's daughter. She is fragile." Luke ignored their warnings. He felt no fear or judgment, only a growing connection with Ayoka. She was different from anyone he had ever met, not weak or fragile, but strong in ways others did not understand. He began to realize that her blindness did not limit her. It sharpened other senses and gave her a deep awareness of the world. One afternoon, as the sun blazed high in the sky, a local boy tried to tease Ayoka. He ran up to her and grabbed her basket, laughing. She froze for a moment, unsure what to do. Luke stepped between them quickly. "Leave her alone," he said firmly. "She is not weak. You should show respect." The boy hesitated, then backed away, muttering under his breath. The villagers nearby watched, some with approval, some with resentment. Luke knelt beside Ayoka and said gently, "You did nothing wrong. Don't let anyone make you feel small." Ayoka smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest she had not felt before. Luke's words gave her courage. She began to try things she had avoided in the past. She climbed small hills with his guidance, touched the rough bark of trees she had never felt closely, and listened to the songs of birds she had only heard from a distance. With Luke by her side, she discovered a freedom that came from being trusted and respected. Days turned into weeks. The bond between Luke and Ayoka deepened. They shared stories of their lives, his tales of the ranch, her memories of the village, and the sounds of the desert. Luke learned to move quietly, to listen more than speak, to notice the small details that others overlooked. Ayoka learned to trust her instincts even more, and began to teach Luke to observe the world in ways he had never considered. Slowly, the villagers began to see Ayoka differently. Some started speaking to her with more respect, acknowledging her intelligence and unique abilities. Others remained hesitant, bound by old habits and uncertainty. But the change had begun, and it could not be undone. By the end of part 1, Luke and Ayoka had formed a strong connection that no one else in the village could understand. They laughed together, learned from each other, and created a space of trust and friendship that was rare in a world filled with doubt and fear. Though the villagers were still unsure, and some still held prejudice in their hearts, the bond between the cowboy and the blind girl had planted the first seeds of change. The desert, once quiet and distant, now seemed alive with possibility, and Ayoka felt that perhaps for the first time she was truly seen. The days grew warmer as summer settled over the desert, and the bond between Luke and Ayoka only grew stronger. Every morning, Luke rode into the village with the soft sound of his horse's hooves on the dusty path. Ayoka would be waiting by the riverbank, her hands gently brushing the water as she listened to its flow. She would greet him with a cheerful voice, and together, they would explore the edges of the village and the surrounding hills. Ayoka had become more confident than ever before. She moved with purpose and curiosity, trusting Luke to guide her when needed. She was no longer afraid to touch the unfamiliar rocks, the bark of trees, or the feathers of birds that occasionally fell near her. Luke, for his part, had learned to slow down and pay attention to the subtle signs of the world around him. He noticed when a lizard moved in the sand, when a snake slithered silently near a bush, and when the wind carried the scent of approaching rain. One afternoon, while they were exploring a small canyon just beyond the village, Ayoka stopped suddenly. She raised her hands and listened carefully. "Something is coming," she said softly. Luke crouched beside her. "What do you hear?" "There are animals moving, but not like usual." "Something is not right," she explained. Her voice carried a mix of curiosity and concern. Luke strained his ears. He could hear the soft splashing of water and the rustle of dry leaves, but nothing seemed out of place. "I don't hear anything unusual," he admitted. Ayoka smiled slightly. "You have eyes, but you do not always listen. You need to trust your other senses more." Luke laughed. "I think I will have to follow your lead then." As they continued, they reached a wider part of the canyon. The river here ran faster and the banks were steep. Ayoka paused again, her fingers brushing the cool water. "Luke, the river is rising. We should go back." Luke looked at the river and saw that it had risen more than usual. "You're right," he said, leading her back toward the village. They hurried along the path, but when they reached the outskirts of the village, they noticed that the river had begun to overflow. Water was spilling into the lower homes, and some villagers were trying to move their animals and belongings. Panic began to spread. The villagers shouted instructions to each other, but the chaos made it difficult to organize an effective response. Luke immediately took charge, helping people carry heavy items and guiding frightened animals to higher ground. Ayoka, listening carefully, noticed the sound of water rushing fastest toward a small cluster of homes near the edge of the village. She shouted directions, guiding Luke and the villagers to the areas that needed help most urgently. "Move the goats over here," she called. "The river will reach this corner first." Luke followed her instructions, lifting baskets, guiding children, and helping villagers navigate the slippery banks. Together, they worked efficiently, the villagers slowly recognizing Ayoka's insight and quick thinking. Her blindness had not limited her. It had made her more aware of details others could not notice. By late afternoon, the flood had begun to subside. The villagers, exhausted but relieved, looked around at the damage. Homes were safe, animals had been moved, and no one had been seriously hurt. Luke and Ayoka stood together, mud on their boots and clothes, catching their breath. The elders approached them. The chief, Ayoka's father, nodded solemnly. "You have done well," he said, addressing both Luke and Ayoka. "I was wrong to doubt what she could do. She has guided us wisely and bravely." Ayoka's heart swelled with pride, and she smiled up at her father. For the first time, she felt fully seen, not for her blindness, but for her mind, her courage, and her skill. Luke stood beside her, a steady presence, proud and humble at the same time. Children from the village ran up, eager to touch the baskets and hear the stories of the day. "How did you know where the water would go?" one asked. Ayoka laughed softly. "I listened," she said, "and I had good help." The villagers began to speak to her differently after that day. Where there had once been hesitation or pity, there was now respect. They asked for her advice on small things, listened when she shared her observations, and treated her as an equal in the community. Luke watched with quiet satisfaction, knowing that the bond they had formed had not only changed his life, but had begun to change the lives of those around them. Over the next weeks, Luke continued to spend time in the village, though he was meant to be passing through. He helped the villagers with daily tasks, repairing fences, moving supplies, and teaching them simple survival skills he had learned on the ranch. Ayoka accompanied him, showing the villagers how to sense changes in the environment, how to observe quietly, and how to trust instincts they had often ignored. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Luke and Ayoka sat near the river. The village below was calm, the air filled with the soft sounds of evening, birds returning to their nests, the gentle ripple of water, and the distant calls of children playing. "You know," Luke said, "I didn't expect to stay here long when I first arrived, but now, I think I have found a place I belong, even if only for a while." Ayoka smiled, her fingers brushing the surface of the water. "And I didn't expect anyone to see me as I am. Most people look at me and only see what I cannot do. You see me for what I can," Luke nodded. "Everyone deserves that. Everyone deserves to be seen." Their friendship had become something extraordinary, a partnership built on trust, respect, and understanding. It was quiet and simple, yet powerful. The villagers had begun to notice. They saw the way Luke treated Ayoka not as someone to protect, but as someone to support. They saw how she listened, guided, and learned. Slowly, old prejudices faded, replaced by admiration and respect. The chief, once cautious about outsiders, came to Luke one afternoon. "You have helped my daughter see herself in a way I could not," he said. "You have done more than I expected. You are welcome here always." Luke bowed his head respectfully. "Thank you, sir. I only did what I could and learned much in return." Ayoka, standing nearby, felt a sense of warmth and belonging that she had never known. The villagers gathered around her, asking questions, seeking advice, and laughing at her stories. She realized that her blindness did not define her. It had given her the gift of listening, observing, and understanding in ways others could not. And Luke had shown her the power of kindness, patience, and acceptance. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert, the village had transformed. Where there had once been doubt and hesitation, there was now trust and admiration. Ayoka stood confidently, proud and calm. Luke remained at her side, a friend, mentor, and companion in the quiet desert world. As night fell and stars appeared in the clear sky, the village settled into peaceful sleep. The river murmured softly, the desert cooled, and a sense of quiet accomplishment filled the air. Ayoka and Luke had changed each other's lives, and in doing so, had changed the village itself. The story of the blind chief's daughter and the cowboy who saw her true self spread slowly through the surrounding hills. Others began to visit the village, curious to meet the girl who had guided her people through danger and the cowboy who had recognized her strength. But for Ayoka and Luke, the greatest reward was simple: the trust, respect, and friendship they had built, proving that understanding and compassion could overcome fear, doubt, and prejudice. In the quiet moments, as they sat by the river listening to the water flow and the desert hum, they both knew that the bond they had formed would last a lifetime. The village had learned an important lesson. Sometimes, the greatest strength is found in those we least expect, and sometimes a simple act of attention, care, or understanding can change the world. And so, the blind Apache chief's daughter, once doubted and overlooked, stood tall, confident, and respected, and the cowboy who had arrived merely as a traveler found a purpose and friendship that would forever remain in his heart. Together, they proved that connection and trust could overcome even the deepest doubts, creating a story the village would remember for generations.